And good morning to you all, and welcome to the Starting Lineup. Terrific to have you with us on an absolutely beautiful Thursday in the Ozarks. Ned Reynolds joined by
Dwight Glenn
and Maddox Radosevich.
And for the next 2 hours, we are right here talking sports and whatever, and like to hear from you on the this is the Starting Lineup line, which is 417-447-1021. 417, of course, being the area code. But this is a dual-purpose line, folks, because not only is it a phone line, it is a text line as well. Your message can be either text in or phoned in if you want to talk with us on the air. We'd appreciate that happening. 447-1021, that is the number. And we have a lot of topics that we're going to discuss today. In the meantime, the Starting Lineup's brought to you by Play It Again Sports in the Fremont Shopping Center. Battlefield in Fremont, Springfield, everything you want in the world of athletics right there at Play It Again Sports, including a number of trade-ins. If you have some gear that you think will be of value and be traded in, hey, Play It Again Sports is the answer. Swing Right Golf, which is located at the south end of Campbell Avenue, a little bit north of Nixa. And as Dwight Glenn will tell you, it's a wonderful place to go and spend some time.
Go take the family. You can go do batting cages. You can go play Frisbee golf. You can hit regular golf balls outside or inside. A lot of things to do at Swing Right.
Including the simulator, and I love this too, next year's U.S. Open is at Pebble Beach. You can play Pebble Beach down there, can't you?
You can play Pebble Beach on a screen, yes, and it won't cost you $900 and have to pay for a caddy and 2 nights at the lodge. So, and the other thing about the simulator, it's great, especially in inclement weather, whether that be 98 degrees or 18 degrees in the wintertime, and you just don't want to get rusty in the winter. You go in there, you can hit some golf balls, have a beverage, and have a good time.
That sounds perfect at Swing Right Golf. Also by Citizens Bank of Rogersville with 2 locales, 2 routes they call them. One is adjacent to Highland Springs, and the other is in Rogersville itself. And by Marshfield Chevrolet with a exit at I-44 right there at Marshfield. You take that exit, turn left at the light, and as a matter of fact, there are 2 lights, and you have to make 2 lefts, and you drive right into Marshfield Chevrolet. Great having you with us. Big show lined up today. And indeed, we're going to talk about some varying subjects, because on the show today we have Mac Whitehead, the very successful head coach at Clever High School. And this is interesting, too, because Clever's program, relatively speaking, is new. And yet they're on the verge of some pretty good football.
I was actually living in Clever when they first started talking about having a football team, which they had never had before. I mean, that was a literal, and I know we're getting confused now with what 1A is versus 6A, but when we say 1A, we are talking about small enrollment, and I always wondered if they would have enough interest to even field a football team, but that community grabbed football and loved it from day one. They did the same thing that Nixa did, which has now been 40 years ago. A lot of people don't know that Nixa didn't have football until 1982. And they started with a freshman team, then a junior varsity team, and then eventually a varsity team. So then, instead of just jumping into varsity, you had 3 and 4 years to get those kids acclimated to playing football and getting the town excited about it. And I think for a small town, Clever supports their football team as well as any of them.
Do you remember the name of the league that Nixa was in when they first started football?
Green County League.
Bingo, the Green County League. And it was against,
Walnut Grove,
the small
Springfield Catholic, you know, but
this is Nixa, folks, that's playing now, Liberty North. And
okay, well, obviously, I am old, so I can reflect on this. But back in 1980, do you know what the census was of Nixa? Because it was on the speed signs for about 10 years.
And then, of course, you had the sucker days down there. I would say 2,500.
1,630.
Wow. Is that what it was?
That is what it was. I mean, and then it was, nothing is overnight, but you could see around 1990, 91, all of a sudden there was just a housing boom down there. Because even when I was in high school and I graduated, our graduating class was the first one to have 100 people in it. And now, I think by enrollment, Nixa might be the second largest school in the state of Missouri.
6.
Right.
And that's the biggest that you could possibly be. What is the population of Nixa now?
You know, you'd have to look at the census. It probably would say around 22 to 23,000, but I would estimate, honestly, because of the way houses are, and now there's a lot of apartment buildings going up in Nixa. So I would say at this point it would probably be closer to 25,000.
Jeez.
And I think Maddox is looking it up as we speak.
And the answer is 27,318 in 2026.
We're both wrong.
Well, that never happens.
27,000? Holy smokes, I didn't realize it was anywhere near
Well,
that.
when you moved here, didn't it feel like, and I can say this having grown up in Nixa, you know, when I did in the 70s, but remember when it felt like driving to Branson was a big deal?
Mm-hmm.
Like it felt like you were driving what we'd say now to St. Louis or Kansas City. Well, I remember as a kid, it was a big deal for my mom and dad to take the three of us kids to Springfield for dinner. We'd do that maybe once a month. I mean, driving to Springfield was a trip. And, you know, now we all drive all the time and we don't think anything of it. But
It's commuting now.
But Nixa has basically always been a bedroom town for Springfield, but now Springfield and Nixa are almost connected.
You know, that's interesting you bring that up, too. It's not going to be in my lifetime, and it may never happen, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if somewhere along the line, in many years from now, Ozark and Nixa don't become Springfield.
Oh, good Lord. I don't think so.
Don't think so?
No. And there's already been debate, and the school board is pretty adamant about this not happening. But you know what happened in Springdale. You know what happened in Jeff City. There's been rumors and talk about Nixa splitting into two high schools, but they are adamant they are not going to do that. In fact, they've got plans or are diving into plans to build or at least expand the current high school, which they thought when they built would last them to 2040. It's going to last them to about next year.
And right next door is Clever.
Right.
And Clever is certainly expanding, to say the very least.
Well, Clever still has farmland that you can actually go out and buy. You know, Nixa's running out of land, and I tell you the areas two areas that are really growing and thriving right now is Republic and Willard. And Republic has gone out of their way, the city leaders have, to bring in industry. And you know, Republic has that very nice water park, which is kind of a smaller version of Whitewater, and that's great for the community. You know, the kids have something to do in the summer without having to go way out of town to do it. Parents feel safe dropping their kids off and letting them go swim and surf and do all of that stuff. And who would have thunk it, Ned, 40 years ago, how all of these small towns have evolved?
Oh, it's changed. All of it has changed, and changed for the better. That's the key right there. But it's also bringing in a different population, a population of the entire area. Springfield's surrounding area has increased mightily. And that all comes with change.
Well, a lot of people would not believe this, but you and I witnessed it. I know in 1985, the championship game of the Blue and Gold was Nixa versus Kickapoo, which at that time was the small school versus the big school, and the fire marshal had to lock the doors at Hammond Student Center because there was over 9,000 people in the building.
And loved it. Everybody loved it. Now It's still Nixa versus Kickapoo, but they're virtually, well, actually, Nixa's bigger.
Nixa's bigger. And the thing that's happened, and, you know, I know there's been a lot of hand-wringing in Springfield about this, but they're kind of hamstrung by this. Because when you are over 5 schools, you have to give everybody equal opportunity, equal facilities and all of that. Well, so many people that once lived in Springfield have gone out to Nixa and Willard and Ozark and Republic because of the facilities, because they all have new gyms. Now they all have indoor facilities, and you can go out there and still, in certain cases, find an acre of land, you know, where you're not surrounded by a bunch of people, and you can't do that in Springfield. So, you know, what's the newest gym in Springfield, Missouri?
I would say the newest one would have to be Kickapoo High School.
And we're talking 50 years ago.
Well, let me backtrack on this because Greenwood.
That's true.
Greenwood does have that.
But that's under the auspices of Missouri State.
It still does qualify. It's within the city limits, so yes, they would have to be the newest one. And I think it'd have to be those two.
Right, and Parkview's still using the gym that the Jolly Green Giants used back in the 60s.
They did. Where the St. Louis Hawks of the NBA played, I think, the Boston Celtics, if I'm not mistaken, on that court. Hey, this is...
Nostalgia at its best.
It is. Anyway, all brought about by the fact that Mac Whitehead, the head football coach at Clever, will be on with us at 8 o'clock. And then Jason Schwartz from the Springfield Cardinals. They're playing well and would play particularly well last night, but still, nonetheless, they are right there in the hunt for a second division or second half championship and a place in the playoffs. As far as the starting five is concerned, some very interesting developments going on tonight. Opens up the preseason football with the Hall of Fame game at Canton, Ohio. I get thinking about this. It'll be a Hall of Fame game, and the rookies will play, and you won't see any of the veterans. I wish they had it. It hasn't been in existence since 1976, but the College All-Star game. I just found it so particularly appealing. The NFL owners did not, but by this, I understand that too as well. But for the crowds, although they were diminishing over the years, played at Soldier Field in Chicago, and the College All-Stars, the Associated Press College All-Stars, and there were about 45 or 50 of them, all of whom were top draft choices too. Took on the Super Bowl champs, and it was fun. The
problem with that in today's age is all those college players have to value not getting hurt and would not want to risk injury. And what would you feel like if you're getting ready to go in the pros or going into your senior year of college when you have $4,000 in NIL and you tore your MCL at an all-star game?
Well, it's exactly why the NFL owners, of course, you had to be a senior, you had to be graduated. You couldn't play as an underclassman, although that's probably subject to change now as well. It's beside the point. They don't play it anymore. Ended in 1976. So now you have the Hall of Fame game as the first of the NFL preseason games. The Chiefs will play a week from Saturday. Not this coming Saturday, but a week from Saturday, in their first preseason game at Arrowhead. And they have two of them at Arrowhead this year. As a matter of fact, the Rams and the Seahawks. This will be against the Rams. And they have the one on the road, and I think, if I remember correctly, that's Tampa Bay, I think is who it is. But be that as it may, 3 preseason games, then the season's with us.
It's amazing to me that we still have 3 preseason games because I think, the direction they're going, they want to go to 18 games, which seems to me to be a lot potential injuries because you're really, you're having a car wreck every time you play football and you're going to do that one extra time. But if they go to 18, they'll drop it down to 2. But the owners don't want to lose the exhibition games because they put that as part of their season ticket package.
Maddox is too young to remember this, but back in the old days in the NFL, the exhibition games, and there were 6 of them. They played 6 preseason games. Of course, the season was 12 and then morphed on to 14, and now it's 17. But they had 6 exhibition games, and some of them, not all, but some of them were barnstorming. I can remember the last one the Chiefs played on the road, I think was at Norman, Oklahoma. They played an exhibition game down there at University of Oklahoma Stadium, but that was not at all unusual to go to, I won't necessarily say small towns, but to take them out of the home confines and play before different audiences. I thought it was a great idea.
Wow. I mean, that sounds like a really cool concept, and you talk about the college all-star game too. I mean, just not really the same today. Jacob Clark played in some version of an all-star game this year, but it's just not anything like you described it. Completely different environment now.
The college all-star game back then, and they were the Associated Press. That's the paragon for naming the all-star teams. And you had about, I think it was 50, a squad of 50, and they would come together, maybe 3 weeks before the game and go through all their drills and try to get together. But you're playing the Super Bowl champs. Before the Super Bowl, they played the NFL champs. That game dated back to the late 1930s, and it was a charity for the Chicago Tribune Charities. The guy who founded it was the guy who founded the baseball all-star game, Arch Ward. And be that as it may, though, it was just a great concept because you focused in on it. It was the game that everybody watches. Usually in late July is when it happened. And Soldier Field, the crowds went from 85 and 90,000 down to about 50,000. So they saw, and the owners said, we're going to take the rookies out of here because they're getting hurt, and that's going to ruin our investment, and so forth and so on. So the first of the NFL exhibition games is tonight, and it's the Arizona Cardinals and the Carolina Panthers. They'll play at Canton, Ohio, and then the NFL or the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction ceremonies are coming up this weekend, all surrounding that. Then, indeed, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, and they play a little bit later on next weekend, and so do the other teams. I think the next exhibition games are Thursday, but the Chiefs play on a Saturday. But be that as it may, nonetheless, the pro football preseason getting underway, and the college games are not too very far away. We'll take a time out here on the starting lineup. Don't go away. Much more coming up. We're very pleased that you're with us here on the starting lineup, and welcome back, Matt Reynolds, along with
Dwight Glenn
and Maddox Radosevic.
Guys, we've been talking a little bit about some of the top stories. We kind of got off base a little bit with the exhibition game coming up. Very interesting circumstance, at least in my opinion, yesterday, and I can't decide whether this is a dying gasp on the part of LIV or whether or not they're legitimate with wanting to go ahead. Now, the commissioner, the guy who runs the show for LIV in the United States, which is, of course, where it's based, has said that there will be a season in 2027, and a new investor has been found in LIV. And that new investor is going to allow the players to have equity within the league and be owners themselves, in a sense. Who's the new investor? Well, we can't tell you that quite yet, but that lends me to believe that not everything is solid. What would you think, Dwight? You follow the game.
I do follow the game. There was a whole lot of hot air being spewed yesterday, and I understand they're trying to quell all the rumors about the demise of LIV. They owe a bunch of creditors. It came out the day before yesterday that John Rahm, who is one of their prominent players, is owed $150 million. So that would be their biggest debtor that they would owe money to. And they have started to file bankruptcy, against their creditors. So I think he's trying to breathe life into something. Like you said, it may be a last gasp. There was no mention of who this investor or investors were or how much the investment would be. And there's no television contract for next year. Their deal with Fox was for 1 year. So if you don't have a national or even a streaming television contract, where are you going to generate revenue that's going to make these equity investors make money? Because you're never going to sell enough tickets to these events. Plus, you're not just paying John Rahm, you're paying the contracts of 54 players to go all over the world. I mean, it doesn't add up. And from a logic standpoint, what it tells me is I'm afraid my players are going to rush back and try to go back to the PGA Tour or go to the Asian Tour, and I'm going to have nothing to try to get an investment for. So they're literally scraping the bottom of the barrel. And all they said yesterday was they had an investor, but there's no contract, there's no commitment that we know of. And a lot of times when you have somebody that signs a letter of intent, there are certain things that have to be met before you will make the investment. You have to secure a contract with a television network. You have to secure Bryson DeChambeau and John Rahm. You have to give us a game plan how you're going to pay these debtors off. Did you hear any of that yesterday?
No, that's the key. That's why I think this may have been just a fleeting grasp at, hey, we're still around and we're planning on being around, but how are you going to do it? And then to pay off the debts that they have, that's the key. There was one, I think LIV has a championship round. It's not like the FedEx Cup, but it's a championship in Michigan somewhere, and it's 3 weeks from now. They haven't even made plans for it yet.
Right.
That tells you something.
The writing's on the wall, folks. I mean, even I can't imagine anybody that has enough business acumen to even have $350 million that would see that as a good investment. And as far as the players saying that they're going to get equity in what? I have equity in this air around me right now, and it's worth what it's worth. Zero. And I don't think if I'm Bryson DeChambeau, who has a YouTube channel which is generating him millions of dollars, what benefit is it to go out there and play in what's quickly becoming a minor league in front of nobody?
With the PGA having already established a couple of minor leagues, they have their Tour 1AA or whatever they call the one for next year, plus the Corn Ferry, plus the Asian Tour and others, all of whom are associated with the PGA and not with LIV. So, yeah, I have to think that they've got a huge barrier to have to overcome to make this work.
The concept was we're going to create teams, and each team captain had equity in the team. Phil Mickelson was one of them, DeChambeau, John Rahm. But there's no equity when there's no tour. And when you aren't generating revenue, I mean, the Saudis spent $5 billion and then said no mas. That should tell you something.
$5 billion. And they said, we're out of here. That's right. And it does. I think it's the handwriting on the wall. And when you have a circumstance like that, you better have full financial backing.
Switching topics real quick. Did you see or hear about Bob Costas' interview with Rich Eisen yesterday?
No, I did not.
Because we've been talking about baseball and the holdout, and there's nobody that I respect more talking about baseball than Bob Costas. I mean, I love Tim Kurchin and Buster Olney and those people, but Bob's been around the game for literally 55 years now, and he says he expects there to be a holdout in December, or a lockout. He says there's no way to avoid it. They're too far apart. And he says he doesn't think the owners would mind at all that it would go through spring training into May to reduce the season to about 140 games. Because April, the weather is bad, your attendance is not as good. They only have to pay the players for 140 games. He goes, to me, it looks calculated that there's not really any discussions going on because the owners don't want to have them.
Can you deny that? Now, go ahead.
It's hard to say, yeah. I mean, the factor in here that is a kicker for me is what are you going to do about the TV deals? I mean, if you miss out on 20 games there in the beginning of the season, are the owners willing to sacrifice that? Maybe they are, but it's just a time of uncertainty right now. And, I mean, as a fan, you want to see the games played. Everybody expects games to happen once baseball season rolls around. So if that's not there, are people going to find other things to do if this lockout extends for a long enough time? We've already seen it happen with the way that COVID played out. Lots of people walked away from the game, fans, and it took a while to get that kind of attention back to the sport. So does Major League Baseball want to have that happen again?
They take a very big chance. And again, the corollary to that, in my opinion, is the fact that you're dealing with the owners. And these are all giants in industry. Steve Cohen is a hedge fund operator. $21 billion is what he is worth. Okay, when you do that, and while he's the most wealthy of them all of them, look at the Philadelphia Phillies. They used to be backed, not anymore, but backed by P.S. DuPont, for heaven's sake. Here's the key. If the owners, all of whom are ego-oriented, are willing to say, yeah, we can sacrifice a little bit, and we'll take a chance at losing that money, because are we really losing it? It's just a drop in the bucket to them. The players are the ones who I think would suffer from this. The median salary in Major League Baseball, not the average, but the median salary is $1,400,000. That means you have half the league above that and half the league below that. Those players below that, while $1,400,000 is a lot of money, and the $900,000 and $800,000 and $700,000 a year is a lot of money as well. Those guys are not accustomed to living on that right now, and that would hurt. That would hurt them, and they would have to, in fact, adjust their financial schedules and come up with something new. And they're athletes. They don't want to be sitting around doing nothing. Come on, I'm not sure that I buy that. I hope the cooler heads prevail, and it's not a calculated circumstance, and that indeed somehow a settlement is made.
The other thing you have to realize, too, from the television, all the television deals, and there's multiple television deals now between streaming and broadcast television and cable, is if they do not play a certain amount of games next year, MLB is locked into those agreements for an additional year before they can renegotiate. So if I'm the owner, I would be thinking, let's figure a way to figure this out, keep the popularity growing, because the popularity has started to increase the last 3 or 4 years. Ratings are better, attendance is better, not so much in St. Louis, but that's because they've been stinking. But, you're growing the popularity. Do you want to kill that and to kill the momentum and not get a better TV or TV deals for the next go-around?
There's the question. And that they have to debate, they being the owners, have to debate among themselves. The players, I think they're unified. They do not want a salary cap. The owners say, we do want a salary cap. We want to control what we're spending. They will be willing to sacrifice X amount of millions or billions of dollars in order to get their game plan. Now, how much are they willing to sacrifice? Will it carry over into the season? I think Costas may have some point there, but I can't see it lasting a whole long time because of the amounts of money that they'll lose.
We were talking the other day when I was in here that, baseball is such a cool game because stats still mean something. You know how many home runs Babe Ruth hits. You know what the, single season record for hits was, whatever the case may be. But one of the things, and you and I have talked about this before in the past, Ned, I wish they'd go back to 154 games, and I'm not sure I wouldn't be opposed to 140. Because one of the things I think that makes the NFL what it is there's 17 games. There's 17 opportunities to watch your favorite team. So each game is very, very meaningful. MLB is 162 games. Costas is correct. April in Minnesota can be a you-know-what. It could be 20 degrees outside. April in Chicago can be really cold. So what if you started the season May 1st and ran through the end of October and reduced the schedule to 140 games? And the other thing that we all miss, and it only happens now out of necessity, is double headers, true double headers, where they play a game at 3 o'clock, they take 30 minutes, and then they play another game.
I'll piggyback off that, Dwayne. I think one thing that I want to see more of, and this might not be a popular opinion, but I wish they would go back to the old schedule where you would play teams in your division more often.
I agree.
I miss seeing Cardinals, Cubs, all those times that they used to play, and now, I mean, you barely even get that over the course of the year. Same thing for Red Sox, Yankees. People want to see those rivalry matches.
Maddox, I could not possibly agree anymore. That's 100% correct. The division games are why we exist and why the teams exist. They do have things fragmented now to the point. I have a buddy I sit with who he doesn't like the interleague play at all. And I'm not necessarily ambivalent, but I'm not violently against it. But still, seeing the American League teams against the National League teams does have its advantages, but it also has major identification disadvantages, in my opinion.
I don't feel like the rivalries are what the rivalries used to be. Not even the Yankees and Red Sox is not what it used to be. And I think that part of that is, remember 1985 when the Cardinals played the Royals? That was a big deal, not just because it was two Missouri teams playing, because it was the American League and National League. To me, the National League and American League, there is no separation anymore. There's a DH in both leagues. The rules are the same for both leagues, correct? So, I mean, other than in name only, there is no separation.
And that's where the identification difficulties come in, because take for instance the All-Star game. But when I was a kid growing up, when you guys were kids, it was American League versus the National League. That's a big deal. You were emotionally involved in that as a kid. And our league's better, and no, your league, and so forth. So it doesn't exist now.
When Bob Gibson played in the All-Star game, you know what he was famous for? He would not talk to his teammates, because those are the people he was going to be facing in the batter's box, 2 days later. Even though he was in a National League and wanted the National League to win, he wasn't going to play, rub your noses with Willie McCovey, because he was going to go try to strike him out 3 days later.
Which in fact Gibby could do although McCovey was a mighty tough customer.
Well, it also, and maybe it's diluted, and maybe it's just because I don't follow it as much, but there was something magical about all-star teams that had Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and Willie McCovey and Willie Stargell and Lou Brock and Roberto Clemente. I mean, those were all icons, were they not?
Standing. Yes, it was, too. I was standing in the crowd of about 42,000 at Old Royal Stadium up in Kansas City for the first time the All-Star game was ever played there, and seeing the players introduced and seeing the one player who got the standing ovation from everybody, Bad Henry. And when he stood up there and took his hat off and waved it to the crowd, I thought, this is big time. Before we take a break, there's a phone call. Let's see if we can get a caller on the air here and find out just exactly what's going on. Good morning. With talking this morning.
This is Chuck.
Chuck, what's going on, man?
Oh, not much. I was listening to you talk about the baseball, and I was hoping it wouldn't happen, but I'd like to see the National League not play interleague games and just and take away the DH in the National League, and that way it'd make the All-Star game better. Plus, I'd like to see them just have one winner in each league like they used to. I know it eliminated a lot of playoff games, and they won't do that. But I'd like to see it and really publicize, win the pennant. That's
your point's well taken, and it's one that I think a lot of us share, going back to the old days where you had your specific champions, American League against the National League, and one World Series. But I don't think that's going to happen, and that's television's the reason why. And the playoffs, they have to exist to some extent. Now, I wouldn't at all object to having a one half season winner against another half season winner, having them in the playoffs and so forth, and then having a World Series candidate after that. But as far as having the singular ones, the champion, in a pipe dream, that would be good, but I don't think it's going to work, and the crowds and so forth and so on would probably be limited. Chuck, appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Go back to 2 divisions even in each league, too.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
All right.
Hey, thanks for listening to us, man. All right, we'll take a time out here on the starting lineup. Brief break, more coming up. We thank you very much for joining us on the starting lineup, which is brought to you by Play It Again Sports, by Citizens Bank of Rogersville, by Swing Right Golf, and by Marshfield Chevrolet. Ned Reynolds along with
Dwight Glenn
and Maddox Roosevelt.
We are into intense discussion here on baseball and what might be forthcoming. Didn't even mention the fact that the Cardinals and Royals both played last night. Cardinals win, beat the Yankees 3-1, take today off, and then come home for what Dwight and I think accurately forecast could be a 3-game sweep.
Well, I don't think you can predict much with this team. In theory, if they play solid baseball and get solid pitching, they are a better team than the Rockies. But it's still baseball, and anything can happen. And I would have thought, even though the Royals have struggled, you would not think they would go get swept in 3 games out in Colorado, and they got swept, and they got really destroyed out there. I guess it was the weekend before last. Or last weekend.
Yeah, it was last weekend. 12-6 was one of those games, too. Maddox, you observe it, and you're a baseball fan. What circumstances do you see coming up here in the dog days of August and into September and so forth?
Well, I'm kind of going to go out on a limb here, Ned, because I don't think a lot of people are talking about this team right now, but I think they deserve attention. The Boston Red Sox have won 7 straight games. They now have the 3rd best record in the American League. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they had the worst record in the American League back a couple months ago. So it's been an incredible turnaround. That bullpen is scary good right now. They have 4 relievers that have a sub-3 ERA. And if you get into a playoff environment with that kind of bullpen, I think it's going to be very difficult to stop a team like that.
And Maddox, here's the anomaly that's involved, because they have rallied ever since firing their manager, who is one of the foremost proponents of astute baseball, Joey Cora, or Alex Cora, in making a team a winner in the firing. And here the team has won since then. That puzzles me completely. It's
just really amazing what they've been able to do. And, they also grabbed Adley Rutschman, like we talked about the other day, at the trade deadline. The Yankees, I'm sure, would have loved to have had him. They were in the search for a catcher, and the Red Sox grabbed him. So it would not at all surprise me if the Red Sox surpass the Yankees here before the season ends. And I think it's going to be a long shot for them to catch the Rays. There's still a good amount of games back from them. But, again, if they get into the playoffs and they have that momentum, I think it's going to be really difficult to stop them with a weak American League. I could see them getting all the way to the World Series.
Interesting. Very interesting conjecture.
And the other team that has the 3rd best record since June 1st is the Detroit Tigers, which makes it even more fascinating. That just shows you they had no confidence in their ability to keep Tarek Skubal, because they probably couldn't afford his salary next year. So they had to get something rather than getting nothing. But if you're a Detroit fan, would you not be frustrated to have one of the best pitchers in baseball not able to pitch for you because your team got rid of them when you're rallying and trying to make the playoffs?
Again, you run into the different mindset here. You talk about, and Skubal will be a free agent, as will Dustin May and some of the others who have been traded along the lines. But what is free agency, and what is your bargaining chip when the league may not even exist? And it's everybody's taking a big chance on all of this.
Well, the other thing, too, you may know the answer to this. I don't. When does free agency begin?
After your 6th year in baseball.
I'm sorry, time of year. Is it right after the World Series, or?
It begins at the end of the World Series. Yes, you can start making free agent deals then, and you can start making trades.
Okay, if that's the case, if you have a free agent that's going to get a big contract, would you not try to sign it as quickly as possible, not knowing if there's going to be a salary cap or not?
Where's your money going to come from?
Well, it's a conundrum either way. I mean, if you don't sign a contract, obviously you're not going to get paid if you don't play. So I guess it's 6-1, half dozen the other. But if there would be a salary cap, instead of making $50 million a year, maybe you're going to be cut down to only being able to make $35 million because the teams that can afford you are going to have a salary cap. If you're agents right now, if you're ownership, this is a chess game of the biggest, extreme ever. Like we were talking with Rob Raines yesterday. If you're the GM of the St. Louis Cardinals, who do you put on your 40-man roster versus who do you need to keep developing if next season goes away?
And I think that's why some teams decided to offload players that aren't just becoming free agents this offseason, but next offseason as well, just because of the uncertainty. I mean, you saw the Cardinals got rid of Lars Nootbaar. They still had another year of control under him.
That's right.
And I think people are asking why the Kansas City Royals didn't do the same thing, because they've got guys like Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha who they decided to retain, and it's just unpredictable. It's difficult to say what you're supposed to do in this situation, not knowing what's going to happen next year. But I think some teams are taking the approach, hey, we're just going to get rid of these guys that are going to be free agents the following season because we're not sure what's going to happen next year.
That's the forethinking that I think that goes into this, Maddox, what you just brought up. What happens next year to those free agents? Do you get core value for those guys? And, well, a guy like Seth Lugo, who will be, 37, 38 years old, somewhere around there, very limited. Michael Wacha, not quite that old, but still, he's been around a long time, and we use those two as examples here. There are circumstances that are going on that really kind of are very interesting in regards to how teams are going to be formulated. As far as the trade deadline is concerned, Dwight, I'll hit you with this first. Who do you think came out as the big winner in that one?
Oh, from this past go around? It depends on his health. I mean, you'd like to think Boston, because their biggest lack was catching. They had the lowest amount of home runs from their catching position, lowest average, most errors, pass balls and everything. They were struggling to throw out runners. So you get what is upper top tier catcher when he's healthy. It's hard for me to ever say somebody with a pitcher, because a pitcher can only go once every 5 days. But Philadelphia right now is looking mighty pretty with their acquisition.
I'm going to get into that in a second. Who do you think, Maddox?
Well, I absolutely agree with Dwight. I think the Red Sox had a great trade deadline. The other team, though, that I think a lot of people are talking about is the Chicago Cubs. I mean, they really bolstered up their bullpen, got some good starting pitching, too, with Kevin Gausman, and I think that's a team that didn't really need a lot of help. They've already been playing good baseball, but you see even what it did for the club's morale, getting those acquisitions. I think this is the best time that the Chicago Cubs have had all year. It's difficult to sweep a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers, and that's exactly what happened over these last few days.
And it's those Dodgers who have lost 6 in a row now. Time to panic? Probably not, because they're a good baseball team. But you have to start thinking we may be vulnerable somewhere along the line. My pick is my ball club as a kid, the Philadelphia Phillies, because I love the acquisition of Luis Arias from San Francisco. Here's a guy, I think this is team number 5, if I'm not mistaken, that he has been with, and he has been the 3-time National League batting champion in the league this year. So why is he being traded? Because he is not a power hitter. He is a slap hitter. He's a guy with Philadelphia who, in my opinion, will set the table for Schwarber and Harper and some of these other, Marsh and some of these other people who can hit the long ball. And that will, I don't think, do anything but be a big benefit. Although, watching last night's scores come in, it's 4-4 in the 10th inning. Washington won the game 10-4. Well, obviously something other than just a bad mix happened. The pitching just went to blazes, but that can happen.
Well, one of the things that's going to be interesting too, with Aries. How do you pronounce that?
Luis Ariz.
Ariz. Okay, I don't know why I can't say that. Is his fielding position second base? His statistics have been horrible the last few years, but they were talking about his time in San Francisco. He worked with Ron Washington every day to try to get to be a better fielder. So he may have a little bit more value, but you're right. They look at the power numbers, you know. We used to all think just 300 average is what you're wanting to achieve. That's a great hitter. Now they're wanting 25 home runs and 80 RBIs, and they could care less what your batting average is.
Are you a long ball fan, Maddox? You're a kid. You're a young man. Do you appreciate that more than you do the science of the game?
Well, I just think that something is missing in today's game because it doesn't make sense to me to go for the home run every single time. If you have second and with one out, you're not looking for a home run if it's a tied ball game. You're just looking for a deep fly ball. You want to get that run home. And it doesn't make sense to me because these players have been trained to swing for the fences regardless of the situation, and I just don't think it's very smart baseball.
Maddox, you just brought up another point that I've tried to justify in my mind, and I cannot do that. This dumb rule, the ghost runner on second base in the extra innings, I understand why it's implemented, but I don't like it. But look at the numbers of times you start the game or start the 10th inning with the runner on second base. How often is that individual sacrificed to third?
Rare.
Never. You just don't see it. And that's the obvious, in my opinion, obvious point that you would have to make.
Well, the St. Louis Cardinals had one of the smartest, most intelligent baseball players in history with Matt Carpenter. You know, very intellectual, was very good at judging balls and strikes. In the last 3 years of his career, he couldn't hit one to the left side because of the shift. And literally, he could have laid down a bunt 3 times a game and gotten 3 hits because they were not going to respect his ability to hit to left field, but yet he still tried to pull the ball every single time.
He was going to beat that shift.
Yeah.
It baffles me. I mean, you know, even not that long ago, I feel like it was just 10, 15 years ago when you would get talked to about striking out with runners in scoring position and less than 2 outs. But now it's almost commonplace. I don't even think these teams care. They say, oh, well, he was just swinging for the fences. He's doing what we told him to do. It is just so confusing to me. I mean, you have a run right there, and it's simple. I know the pitching has gotten a lot better, but these guys just have to find a way to put the ball in play and get those runs home.
I know we're going to have to go to break, but I have a comment about the pitching is better when we come back.
We'll see. We'll take a time out, and we are coming right back. Please stay right where you are. Once we left you a few seconds ago, we were right on the verge of having Dwight Glenn perhaps offer some, I don't want to say opposition, that's not what it was, but your thoughts on pitching.
Well, Maddox said because the pitching is better. I'm not arguing that point, but is the pitching better? Are they pitching or are they throwing? There's no doubt that they're throwing much harder than they did 20 and 30 years ago. And when I say much harder, there were hard throwers. Don Drysdale, Bob Gibson, they could all bring it. Nolan Ryan. But they were also throwing curveballs and sliders. And now we see so many people, because they don't have to pitch 9 innings, they're throwing really hard, but they're doing it for 5 innings. And then here comes the relief pitching, and they're throwing 99. So you get a fastball after fastball. I'm not saying it's easy to hit, but I think we've lost a little bit of the art of what I would call pitching.
We absolutely have. I could not agree more, Dwight. I mean, I think similarly to the discussion that we had about hitting with runners in scoring position, I feel like there just isn't a lot of thought that goes into pitching nowadays. I mean, you'll see a team with a 4-run lead late in the game, and you've got a reliever out on the mound who comes into the game, and he walks the hitter on 4 pitches. It doesn't make any sense. If you underhand the ball in to the strike zone, say, hey, try to hit a home run. Even if he does, you're still ahead by 3 runs. But these guys, again, they're just doing what they've been trained to do, which is to go out and throw it as hard as humanly possible, and they don't care where it's ending up.
Look at Jacob Misiorowski of the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, he doesn't go beyond 6 innings, but my goodness, you talk about, what was it, the game just last week, I think it was, in which he struck out 12 of the first 13 batters he faced. Oh, my goodness sake. This is incredible.
It's one thing to throw hard. It's one thing to throw hard and have movement. If you remember Jordan Hicks, that used to be with the Cardinals, he would throw 100 and 101, but there was no movement. And people eventually, major league hitters, professional hitters, are going to eventually time that if you don't have a pitch that can change the speeds and change their eye level. When I was growing up, they used to talk about Maddox and Smoltz and Glavine. They were always working on changing the batter's eye level. Are they looking for something up at the chest as fastball, or are they looking for a slider or a curveball? What would today's GMs think about somebody like Greg Maddux, who didn't throw 90 miles an hour?
Oh, no, he was a spot pitcher and did it very well.
Would he be valued the same way he was valued back then and respected the same way he was respected?
I think he would be, because he was able to determine just exactly how the umpire was going to call the games, number one, and determine what he could do with his breaking pitches. His breaking pitches were pretty good.
Oh, well, he was a master. I mean, he would paint the corners. Now with ABS, would he be as effective?
I think so. Do you, Matt?
I think he would be. There is that one element that gets taken away from him where he can't slowly move further and further outside the strike zone and continually get the call. But I think he still would have been effective because he just had that pinpoint accuracy and precision. And, I mean, that's just something that not a lot of guys have today. But going back to the point about deliberation and the fact that I think thought has kind of been removed from the game in many ways, there's a great interview that Greg Maddux gave talking about how he was pitching to Barry Bonds in the regular season, and he gave up a home run to Bonds. He said that there was this count that he was in where he threw a certain pitch, and the reason why he threw that pitch wasn't necessarily to get Bonds out, but to set him up for what was going to happen 2 months later when those two teams met in the playoffs. They ended up meeting again. Maddux got him out in that same count later on.
That's the thought process that goes into the game, because you do have those wise and dedicated sports guys, baseball guys especially, who do look ahead as to what the possibilities are going to be. Speaking of looking ahead, do you guys happen to see the roster shifts that the Cardinals made? And the reason I bring it up is we talk about pitchers who had a lot of potential. Tink Hence being one of them. I think that I'm not 100% positive. I think they let him go. Designated for assignment.
DFA, that's right.
And he was a very high draft choice, right?
Yeah, gosh, he was. Was he number one? Was he a number one pick? Kid out of Arkansas had turned down, I believe, the opportunity to go to Arkansas and went into the big pitch for the Springfield Cardinals. And that just never came around. Injuries.
Well, if you're talking about pitching, it makes me think, what would happen if a manager tried to go get Bob Gibson after 5 innings?
You're not getting that ball.
What are you doing out here? Get back in the dugout.
Well, it's like the Tim McCarver's famous story that he went out to the mound one time because Gibson had given up a home run, so he went out there to slow everything down, and Gibson said, "What are you doing out here? The only thing you know about pitching is that you can't hit it."
What great lines. And again, I think that emphasized how scientific the game was a number of years ago, which is not to say that it isn't now, but it's a different form, a different approach to what the game is. And it's an approach that I wonder if we'll continue to see exist as the contract talks go on and so forth and so on, because you're going to run into differing opinions. The salary cap by the owners who want that, the salary cap who the players adamantly are opposed to. Who's going to win when December 1st falls upon us? And I agree. I do think there will be a lockout somewhere along the line, and that's where things will end. I tell you what we'll do, guys. We're going to take our mid-show timeout. We do have some guests coming up in the second segment. We invite you to stay right where you are on the starting lineup.